In 2019, Hammer released The Lodge, but could it dislodge all those older Hammer films from my consciousness and become my favourite Hammer film ever? Hi guys, so before we get into it, a very quick disclaimer that you'll find all my other Hammer reviews in my Hammer playlist, and there won't be spoilers today. I'm breaking from the script a little bit on that one because this is a relatively recent movie, and because this is the type of movie where if you know the ending, then it will definitely spoil your experience of watching it somewhat. I will leave well alone from giving away the key spoilers of The Lodge. I may talk quite a lot about what happens in the first half of the film, but I won't talk about the second half so much. And one more quick thing to say is that even though I'm reviewing Hammer's very final film today, that doesn't mean that I'm closing the book on Hammer in terms of this channel. I've never reviewed these films in order anyway, but rest assured I will absolutely, as time goes on, be going back and reviewing some of those older Hammer films that I've not yet gotten around to. So, The Lodge. This is a story about a grieving family. At the beginning of this, the mother kills herself because her husband, who she's separated from, has got himself a new girlfriend and she can't cope with that, so she blows her own brains out. We see this very early doors. Her kids are absolutely devastated. She left behind a son and a daughter, both of whom are teens, I think. Maybe not the daughter. She looks like she's maybe 11 or 12 or something. The husband is devastated as well. Maybe not the girlfriend, but there are 4 of them left after this suicide, and they go away on a holiday to a lodge in the middle of nowhere. It's somewhere very wintry, and I guess the hope is that they will use this time to get over their grief, and also it will enable the kids to get to know the girlfriend a lot more so they can all move forwards as a new family. But of course we know that won't happen because this is a horror film. Bad things are going to occur, but I will not spoil the nature of those bad things. The only thing I will say is that this is not a supernatural horror film. This is very much a case of one or more people going stir crazy in a cabin. The film suggests very early on that it could be the 2 kids trying to get revenge on the girlfriend because maybe they perceive that their mother would still be alive if it wasn't for this woman coming along. The film also suggests that the girlfriend might be stir crazy because it's revealed quite early doors that when she was a child she was in a suicide cult and she was the only survivor, so possibly she's got some leftover psychosis from that, but who knows. I actually thought there might be a third possibility, that the cult itself would come to this lodge looking for the one survivor who didn't go down with the rest of the ship, but I'll say no more. In terms of directors, we've got 2 with this. They are Veronika, Franz and Severin, Fiala. I don't know if they're like a husband and wife team, but all the films they've done in their career have been together as a team, and I didn't think that I'd heard of them at first, but going on their filmography, it turns out I am sort of familiar with one of their previous films. They did a horror anthology called The Field Guide to Evil. Now, I put this on one night. It's got 8 stories on it, this film. I only watched the first one and I kind of liked it, but because it was so late, I couldn't carry on and watch the rest of it. But watching The Lodge has sort of reminded me about the fact that I didn't finish The Field Guide to Evil, and now I'm determined not to forget the movie again. In terms of actors, we've got a couple of recognisable people in this. We've got Alicia Silverstone, none other. Now, Alicia Silverstone, she was somebody who shot to fame in the 90s. She did a film called Clueless, and briefly, she was like one of the hot babes of Hollywood. I don't think it's a stretch to say that she was almost like a Margot Robbie of the day. You know, she was on that track, but it just didn't quite happen for her somehow. I think what stunted her a lot was the fact that she got the role as Batgirl in the Warner Brothers Batman films from the 90s. Now, only A-list people were getting into this series at the time, people like George Clooney, Val Kilmer. So Alicia Silverstone to get one of these roles, it was typical sort of where she was at that time, having done Clueless, but it was a complete failure. She just happened to be in like the worst superhero film ever, Batman and Robin. I mean, it was an absolutely atrocious production. To be fair, Alicia Silverstone as Batgirl was probably one of the few things that was actually all right about that disaster, but I don't think that overall flop helped her career at all. And I've no idea what she went on to do after that film. Like, I did take a quick look at her filmography before doing this review, but she's mostly been in films since that most people would never have heard of, and I'm sort of curious as to whether she actually needed to be in this film for the money, or... Because she's only in this for like 5 minutes. She plays the part of the mother who blows her own brains out. So it's very much a blink and you'll miss a sort of part. But I just wonder whether she agreed to be in this hoping that she could pull off a little bit of a Drew Barrymore from Scream sort of deal. Because was she hoping that after The Lodge came out that suddenly it would be all over Twitter? Oh, you've got to watch The Lodge. Alicia Silverstone's in it. But she dies after 5 minutes. You think she's going to be the main character, but she's not. I'm not sure that was a sensible thing to think, because certainly that obviously didn't happen. I mean, I've heard of The Lodge for quite a few years, well, since it came out, really, and I had no idea that Alicia Silverstone was in it until I actually put it on. And I didn't even recognise Alicia herself until after the film when I looked at the credits. I mean, this is not me dissing it. I just haven't seen her in anything since Batman and Robin. So she's gotten older since then, like 2 decades older. I simply didn't recognise her face. But anyway, there's another name, if you like, in this. Richard Armitage. I remember him from the Strike Back TV show. I used to be a massive fan of that when it was on. But like Silverstone, he's not actually in this film that much. Like the two most famous actors in this are not part of the main trio who carried the bulk of the story. The 3 main characters are absolutely the 2 kids and the possibly psychopathic girlfriend. So yeah, it's kind of weird that the 2 people you may recognise are not in the film that much. This is a very slow movie, I will warn you of that. This is essentially a slow burn in icy weather. The movie is about 1 hour and 45 minutes long. Once you get through the prologue with the suicide, I don't think anything happens for about an hour after that. It's very meandering. And because this isn't one of those supernatural films, there's not a lot that happens around the lodge that can just tide you over. You know, when you're watching a film like The Conjuring or Insidious, those types of films can be very slow as well to begin with, but enough ghosts will knock things over and cause things to go bump in the night that at least you get a few exciting bits and pieces to keep you going until the main stuff happens. But in this film, because it's not that type of film, there's not really much that can happen for a long time. People just kind of fall out with each other a little bit in this, I guess, and characters will occasionally look shifty, but that's about it for about an hour. And I think the directors do know the problem they've got to an extent, because they have at least tried to make this a very stylishly shot film. You know, for example, there's a close-up shot at one point of like a glass with Alka-Seltzer in it, and you hear this over-exaggerated shh in slow motion, like it reminded me of the most recent Judge Dredd film for some reason. And at one point, there's like a dream sequence where a character just goes out on this icy lake and she sees like a house, but in the shape of a cross, which I thought was a really stylistic way of passing some more of the movie's runtime. There's a lot of arty-farty stuff in the first hour of this, but it's kind of essential just to give you something to keep you going. It even tested my patience a little bit, this movie. And normally I'm all up for the slow burn, you know, but I think what doesn't help The Lodge is the fact that the characters are just so glum and depressed and morbid, and they're all these things even before they get to the lodge. They're all these things before the suicide happens, actually, because the first vibe I got of this family, even before the suicide had happened, was of a group of people who were struggling to get over the fact that the parents have separated, you know. So from minute 1 in this, it's all depression and doom and gloom, and that just made the first hour seem even longer, to be honest. If you've watched a lot of my reviews in the past, you may have heard me be cynical at times about horror films that are full of like young, horny teenagers who are a little bit overexcited at the beginning of a movie. You know, you'll get these horror films that where every character is a teenager or somebody barely over the age of 20, and they'll all be just annoyingly happy in the beginning. Like, they'll all be like high-fiving and going, oh yeah, we're going to go down to the lake today and we're going to get high and we're going to sleep with each other, it's going to be awesome. And the women will already be in bikinis even though the car hasn't yet left the driveway, and they'll be checking with each other how many condoms they've got in their purse. And it'll just be a little bit too much. You'll be like, just dial all this down, you know, just a little bit. But I think I've got a new appreciation of those types of American Pie type horror films, because The Lodge is like the complete opposite of that. It's just so morbid. I wouldn't say that I was disliking this film like half an hour in, 45 minutes in, but at the same time I was thinking, yeah, I think I might actually prefer those films with all the big, loud, obnoxious, horny, randy teenagers. Even the more actiony part of this film is quite low-key. The ending to this feels like something from a Robert Eggers film like The Lighthouse or The Witch. It goes for more of a realistic climax than, say, a movie-type climax. Do not be expecting Misery with James Caan and Kathy Bates having a big scrap and things falling off bookshelves and things, you know, or the end of The Evil Dead with somebody getting a chainsaw and chainsawing all the walls in half and general chaos being everywhere. You don't get an ending to this film like that. What you get is something a lot more subtle, a lot more believable to real life, and I guess I kind of liked what they went for in this with the ending. Obviously I'm not going to spoil it. I do like it when a film is at least brave enough to try finishing a film like this, you know, instead of just doing the whole cliched thing of a killer getting up at least 3 times before they're finally put down and all that stuff. So, you know, a little bit of credit where it's due. But to answer my question from the initial prologue, is this film going to go on to become my favourite Hammer film of all time? No, of course it's not. And I would absolutely, by the way, recommend watching this on a Tuesday night, because it's very much an elevated horror type of movie, and in my opinion, the best night for elevated horror is Tuesday, at least if you're like me. I'm a Monday to Friday worker. On a Monday, my brain is still a little bit foggy from the weekend. I'm still a little bit grumpy at that point that I've got to go back to work. But by Tuesday, my brain is in full gear. I'm going. I'm on it. I'm ready for something like The Lodge. So Tuesday night will be a good night for me to watch something like this. And then maybe later in the week, my brain's starting to get a bit tired. You know, by Thursday night, I'll be watching Halloween 4 or something like that. But obviously, every situation will be completely different. But this is an all right film, just very, very slow. If there was going to be an audiobook of this film, it would be done by that clerk from Zoopolis, the creature who says everything really, really slow. One more thing I wanted to say about this movie. So in the first half, the characters start watching The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, this was notable to me for 2 reasons. Firstly, whenever horror characters are watching horror movies within their own movie, it's usually Night of the Living Dead, because it's free and it's in the public domain. It's just the normal go-to for a production trying to keep its costs down. But the trouble is, I must have seen Night of the Living Dead about 10 times now in horror movies. I've just had enough of it. I was watching quite a big budget horror movie just the other week. I forget what it was, but again with the Night of the Living Dead, and I was thinking, Jesus, surely a film on this level of budget can afford to pay a fee for something else, even if they don't want to shell out for another A-list horror movie to go on the TV. Maybe they could just like find an indie film and put it on, you know, a film done by people who wouldn't mind their film being used for free within another more famous horror movie, and then people watching the film can see that film playing on the TV and think, yeah, I wouldn't mind checking that out, actually, maybe. But it was really cool seeing The Thing used in The Lodge. So credit to the directors for this, for, you know, paying a fee to get a different movie other than Night of the Living Dead. And it's quite fitting that they would use The Thing, actually, because that is a movie about people who don't know who the villain is among themselves, and that's kind of the case with the characters in The Lodge. And also The Thing takes place in the Arctic. It's very cold, there's snow everywhere. That is essentially the same in The Lodge. We are in snowy Massachusetts, I think, and it's just very wintry. So a very appropriate choice of movie for these characters to be watching on their TV screen. And one final point about this is the fact that the thing looks really good on the character's TV. Like, it's a proper HD version of the thing. And I was looking at this thinking, that looks way better than my version. And it's made me think maybe I need to get rid of my DVD version of the thing now. I've probably watched it like 10 times since I was much younger. And given how amazing it clearly is in HD, I need to upgrade to a Blu-ray or something like that. Right. That's enough of that. I think it's just about time to get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give the log. So we got 1, 2, 3 bloody axes out of 5. I think that's a fair score. If you disagree with me though, by all means, lodge a complaint down in the comments below. Until next time, bye-bye.